Hello, everyone. This is Greg Drevenstedt, editor-in-chief at Rider Magazine, and your host for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Our guest today is Eddie Braun. Braun is a Hollywood stuntman who has worked on hundreds of TV shows and feature films, including the Avengers, Transformers, and the Rush Hour trilogy. In 2016, Braun successfully flew a rocket-powered vehicle over Snake River Canyon, completing the ultimate stunt that defeated the legendary Evel Knievel in the 1970s. A documentary about Braun's career called Stuntman is now available on Disney+. This is a great episode you're not going to want to miss. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg, how are you? Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you on the show. So as a kid, when I was growing up in the 70s, I had an Evel Knievel lunchbox like nearly everybody did. And I was a big fan of the TV show Fall Guy with Lee Majors. So I always thought being a stuntman would be a dream job. So how did you get started doing what you do?
Well, as a kid, I met Evel Knievel as a child, and that made such an impression on me. When I met him, the man wore a cape, and much like all the other kids, everybody wanted to be like Evel Knievel. So I met him at a racetrack in Gardena, California called Ascot Raceway, which is no longer there. But I met him as a kid, and from that point on, I didn't want to do anything but be like him. So, I got into racing motorcycles as a kid, and that just led to stunts. I mean, I wanted to be a stuntman. So at 17 years old, I got a shot at being a stuntman and kind of ran with it.
So when you say you got a shot at being a stuntman, I mean, so had you been riding dirt bikes, street bikes, all of it?
I did a little of everything. I mean, I started off on, I had my XR75. I started on minis and mini bikes before my Honda XR. And in fact, I remember cutting out Rider Magazine, which is so cool to be on the podcast because as a kid, like Rider Magazine, I would later cut pictures of Marty Smith out of the magazines. And I was a huge fan of Marty Smith back in the day. But being born and raised in Southern California, Hollywood, basically, I met a stuntman and he kind of let me hang around a little bit as a 16, 17-year-old. And I finally, I was like a sponge. I kept my mouth shut and soaked in all the information. And I got a shot at 17 years old of doing a stunt. And that just led on from there.
That's interesting. I always wondered how somebody becomes a stunt man because, it's like I said, it sounds like you've got to meet somebody, you've got to be tried out. Yeah. These are things that, we think of kind of, that they're dangerous and so forth, but how do you get involved in whatever the training is or the practice to make sure that you're doing stunts that look dangerous, but they're actually pretty safe for the most part?
Well, there is no one set way to become a stuntman. There's no course you can take, or there's courses out there, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a stuntman. It comes down to relationships, who you know. And if you get the shot, you need to bring the goods. And what I mean by bringing the goods is, I think one of the most important aspects of a stunt performer is the ability to listen and take instruction. You don't just go out there and do whatever you want, however you want, as big as you want. No one wants to be around that. Being a stunt performer, you're part of a team, and I think one of the most important things about being a stunt person is your word. Plain and simple. You don't exaggerate something. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. No more, no less.
Right.
And as people start to gain confidence in you and your word, then you get more opportunities. So I would say that's the most important thing is your word.
Well, it's interesting because, as sensational as stunts may look once they are on a TV show or in a movie or something, you're a professional. You've got to do exactly what is expected to get a particular shot. So I imagine, it's not about showboating. I mean, you're trying to make it look as realistic as possible, but you're trying to do it as accurately and as safely as possible.
Well, Greg, that leads into one of the things that I call myself, and I'm very proud to call myself, a professional stuntman. there is a very clear difference between being a daredevil and being a professional stuntman. That being said, you know, a daredevil's great. Evel Knievel was the greatest daredevil ever. Daredevils usually do things on their own to glorify themselves, and they're not exactly sure of the outcome. They do it basically once sometimes and hope for the best. A professional stuntman, however, works quietly as a team. I mean, the beginning of my film, I say, you don't see my face.
Right.
And there's a reason. I'm the face you never see. And I like that. Being a stuntman, you also work as a team with many other professionals. And it's not there to glorify yourself. You're there to for the bigger picture, the art form. And preferably it's something you can repeat. It's got a calculated outcome again and again and again.
Right.
You know, there was a very good reason why I named my rocket the Evel Spirit and not the Eddie Braun. I didn't do it really for me. I did it to honor and homage to the man that inspired me to be a stuntman in the first place, which was Mr. Evel Knievel.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about your, your flight over the Snake River Canyon. Before we get to that, again, it's my own curiosity. It's just, the stunt performer is something that is a curiosity. Is that there are some of the stunts that you've done that were particularly unique or special or memorable that that you'd like to talk about?
You know, it's weird because I don't really I look at my work as a whole body. There's no real particular stunts. In fact, in my home, there is not one photo on any wall of me doing a stunt. I have no glory wall. There's no stunt pictures in my entire house, and it's always been like that. It's the body of the work in the whole that I mean, certainly there's particular stunts that I go, oh, crap, I'd never do that again. But it's not, for me, it's not about that. It's more about projects that I'm really proud, films that I'm proud that I was a small part of. It's more like that rather than a particular stunt.
Well, I know you've got a pretty impressive resume. You've been in the business for a long time. You've worked on a lot of TV shows and films and so forth. So yeah, you've obviously been able to do it well and continue doing it. So if you've been a professional stuntman, then what inspired you to then try to recreate this stunt, which 1974, the Snake River jump, which did not go well for Evel Knievel. He had a number of his big stunts that didn't go very well. So what inspired you to try and make a successful launch?
Well, let me start out by being very clear. There is only one Evel Knievel, and I certainly am not him, nor would I ever try to be him. I never looked at this project as doing what Evel Knievel couldn't. In fact, that bristles me when I hear that. If a relief pitcher comes in the eighth inning, it doesn't mean that the other pitchers before him were failures. They just the relief pitcher just finishes it out, and they're collectively as a team are hopefully victorious. For me, Evel Knievel inspired a complete generation, and at the end of my career as a nodding homage, what better way to pay homage than to finish out the dream of my hero? I mean, how many people have the opportunity to say they completed the dreams of their hero? I'd venture to guess not many.
So how did this project get started? I mean, that's a pretty ambitious undertaking. So
it is more ambitious than I could have ever imagined. I mean, I felt like I bit off way more than I could chew, so I just started chewing like crazy. It was I looked at this, and believe me, I'm not the only person that ever thought of finishing this out. There's been multitudes of people that are bigger, much bigger names than a no-name stuntman named Eddie Braun. I mean, you've got these big daredevils that really wanted, in fact, even like Robbie Knievel wanted to finish this out. The thing about it is, I went at this with the mindset of a stunt coordinator for a bit. I just figured this was a giant action sequence in a feature film. I was very fortunate enough to be the stunt coordinator of all three of the Jackie Chan Rush Hour films. And we had some very elaborate stunts in there. And you know, you had to put your mind to it to figure out how to do it, how to be able to replicate it and do it safely. So I started this whole project. It was actually born in a kitchen. The idea for all this was born in a buddy's kitchen, drinking a bottle of wine with my business partner, Steve Golobiowski, and Charlie Sheen. It was in his kitchen. I said, you know, since I'm going out, I'm starting to wind down my, stunt career. What grander, better, cooler mic drop could it be than to finish out the dream of my hero? So as we consumed more wine, and I'll tell you what, I know the exact day. It was September of 2013 is when we came up with this in Charlie's kitchen. And I said, if I could do this, this would be a great thank you. And thank you, Mr. Evel Knievel, for inspiring me and let me finish out what you started. So it was in the kitchen that this was born. And along with that was Steven said, well, listen, if you're going to do this, we got to film it. He says, of course. So in September of 2013 became the odyssey of trying to finish out Mr. Evel Knievel's dream. I could never understand why he did not go out to finish it. After climbing in that rocket, I get it. I completely get why Evel Knievel never tried it again. I wouldn't do it again. I mean, it was just insane.
So how, so obviously a big part of this is the vehicle itself, the rocket powered, cycle. So he had the SkyCycle. How did your, vehicle differ and and what were you trying to do to overcome some of the limitations he dealt with?
Well, I started after that drunken binge of coming up with the idea in Charlie's kitchen. I've always been a social media guy, just looking up, Facebook, Instagram. Anyways, back then I was, a member of Facebook, and people started to hear about that I was going to try this, or at least I was talking about it. And I came across a guy on Facebook named Scott Truax. Well, Scott Truax happened to be the son of Bob Truax, the original builder of Evel's rocket, Bob Truax. Well, his son Scott, who's about my age, was on Facebook. And so I wrote him a private message saying, hey, we got to talk. So he got hold of me. And after I showed him, it took a little bit to convince him I was legit. He's a sweetheart of a man. He said, listen, I've got all my dad's original plans and I've got spare parts to the rocket. So, theoretically, if you wanted to pay for it and get it going, we could build the exact duplicate. I mean, fit, form, and finish, and use a lot of the spare parts. Well, I pondered that a little bit, and I thought if I were going to do it, I would have to do it original, just like Evel Knievel did, because, listen, certainly with computers and carbon fiber, and you could cross that canyon with a jetpack these days. It wouldn't be a big deal. However, if you did it OG, like original gangster style with the same way,
right,
that's going to raise some eyebrows. I mean, it's like the extreme sports today. In fact, I spent the weekend with Travis Pastrana. I was lucky enough to spend the weekend with him in Atlanta, and we briefly talked about that. These days, these incredible feats that these people are doing are incredible. But for me, being an old dinosaur and like old school, if you did those things on a Harley or one of those old school motorcycles, you'd really get my attention because, back then with the technology of 1974 is when this rocket was designed by Bob Truax. So that intrigued me when Scott had told me we could do it exactly. That really got my gears going. And that's what set the odyssey. Again, in September of 2013, I started this whole odyssey. And in this day and age, you do not realize how difficult it is to launch a missile across a canyon dealing with government agencies, Homeland Security, and God knows what. It
Oh,
was
I'm sure.
quite a over-ambitious, audacious thing. But at that point, I told people I was going to do it. And as a professional stuntman, if you say you're going to do something, you better do it or you're going to lose a lot of credibility.
Sure. So the rocket itself, I mean, you rebuilt to the original specs?
Yep. Fit, form, and finish.
Wow.
Exactly. The only
Now,
thing-
now, and when Evel Knievel's attempt, he had a malfunction with the parachute. Is that correct? So
Yeah,
how?
that's probably the most important component. I mean, it's like, what's worse than getting a car that won't start is
Yeah.
getting a car that won't stop. Uh, no, I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
launching a rocket, a lot of people can launch a rocket. The trick is to recover the rocket in one piece.
Right.
And so that was we really had to put our brains behind it, and quite honestly, a lot of luck, because this had never been done before. And here I was trying to do something that had never been done before to the specs of 1974. So there were no computers, on board this rocket. There's a bunch of, the thing was built with duct tape and a ball peen hammer, basically, in a garage.
So tell us a little bit about how this rocket is, what some of its specs are in terms of its weight, its horsepower, and how this jump took place, because
Well,
that's not something a lot of us know about. So
nor do I. I mean, listen, thank God for Scott Truax. Here's the thing. In essence, first of all, it's powered by hot water, steam. Okay, steam is very powerful. We built a country on steam. The locomotives, though. So steam is no joke. Basically, I'll put it in layman's terms. This was a beer keg, basically, with a stopper on it and filled with 77 gallons of water at a super high temperature at about 77 gallons of water at, I think, like 650 degrees at 500 psi, basically. So it wasn't a beer keg, but it was an oxygen tank to an old B-52 bomber, so it could hold the pressure. It was almost like a lawn chair duct tape to a beer keg. That's what Evel Knievel did. I mean, it was steam. That's all it was. It's hot water. And I got to tell you, when I popped the cork on that thing, it was instant, over 10,000 horsepower, which took me to 439 miles an hour in less than 3 seconds.
Wow. So how much pressure? How much the G force is that?
It was instant 8 Gs. It wasn't a gradual like fighter pilots that you have a G suit. Right. This was like riding an explosion. Wow. It was, the first thing I thought of the minute I hit that button was, oh shit. No, seriously, it's like I got a face punch, an instant face punch. And before my brain caught up with what was going on, I was already going, over 400 miles an hour, and I was 3,000 feet in the air and hauling ass.
So how far is the gap that you had to cover?
Well, here's the thing that's really interesting. When I saw the canyon for the first time, it's a quarter mile wide, about 1,600 feet wide.
Okay.
It looks huge. And it's also about 500 or 600 feet deep. So I said, my God, how am I going to cross this and not be like Wile E. Coyote splatting on the other side? However, when I launched the rocket cleared the canyon in the first second. The rocket went about 5,200 and something feet, which is about a mile. So I literally cleared the canyon by a mile.
And so how do you land something like this? Did you obviously had a parachute, but I don't know how you don't just auger in like a lawn dart. So
yeah, then came the really terrifying thing, is slowing this thing down. So we had what's called a drogue chute, because you cannot open a parachute at that speed. It'll shred it like it'll just shred the chute, and you'll come augering in like a lawn dart. So I launched a drogue chute, and then I was told to count to 10 and then open the main chute, and hopefully all that would work. That's what we hoped and prayed.
So this early chute slowed you down enough to deploy a traditional parachute as well.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But even then, even deploying the main chute, I'm still coming in really, really fast. And two things were coming through my mind. One is I'm either going to shatter both my legs, have two massive compound fractures, or I'm going to be decapitated because the rocket was an open cockpit vehicle. So my shoulders and chest and shoulders and head were actually outside of this thing.
Wow.
And that open cockpit happens to be the weakest part of the rocket. So the chance was always that if I hit hard enough, the rocket would fold in half, thereby cutting me off at the head and shoulders. So even when the main parachute opened, I was still coming in very fast and praying, go, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. I'm either going to break my legs or get cut in half. It wasn't until I finally landed and took a moment to realize, well, my legs don't seem broken and my head's still on my shoulders. Then did I realize, wow, I actually made it.
And did you land safely? No injuries to speak of?
Yeah, well, yeah, to speak of no injuries. I mean, yes, I landed unscathed. However, as the days progressed, for 3 days, I was peeing blood. And and feeling horrible. Every day progressively, I felt worse and worse. So on the third day, I went to see a doctor, and they ran tests, and I did some damage internally to my organs, the G forces, to my liver.
Wow.
But fortunately, that's no more damage that I've done in all my partying. So my doctor said, you'll get over it. You'll pee blood for a few days, and then you'll be fine. But yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience at all. In fact, the night of celebration with all my friends, I was actually in the hotel room early, throwing up and peeing blood. It was awful.
Well, I mean, yeah, I can only imagine, like you said, since all of that pressure hit you instantaneously and you didn't have a G suit or anything like that, but that you didn't sustain a concussion or any broken bones. I mean, you mentioned Travis Pastrana earlier, and that guy has blown out his knees I don't know how many times on a lot of different things, and so that you avoided any serious injury is pretty amazing.
Well, let's be honest. Scott Truax and myself had never done this before, so we were like two guys trying to figure this out. But Scott Scott's father, Bob Truax, designed a wonderful rocket. Scott built it, perfectly, and it performed. Had that chute not come out early for Mr. Knievel, we wouldn't be here talking about it
right
now.
Right. So you said you approached this, like a stunt coordinator. So obviously you've done as much planning. You've got engineers trying to sort of figure out your trajectory and how to slow this thing down. But there still is a big sort of question mark, or there's a big, we hope it all works out that way. I mean,
well, Greg, here's the main things I was fighting. First of all, I paid for it all, and I'm not a rich man. I was spending my money. So I had to cut a lot of corners you would never cut. I mean, everybody said, oh God, you got to put an automatic chute deployment device inside. I said, A, I can't afford it.
Right.
And B, I just better have my wits about me to pull my chutes myself.
Right.
Fortunately, though, all of my experience as a stuntman came into play. I treated this like it was just another day at work. When I was in the rocket sitting there waiting, in my head, I told myself, I'm on the set. This is going to be a stunt that I'm going to perform. And that's what kept me pretty cool-headed. And I didn't freak out too much. I figured, well, okay, I've been in this situation before, as far as having to you really got to focus and keep a cool head and not let the emotional wherewithal. There was a second there as I was climbing into the rocket. I thought, wow, I wonder if this is how Mr. Knievel felt when he was climbing in. Everybody's watching from a very safe distance, about a mile away, half a mile away, people are watching. And I did for a second think, wow, as I sat in that rocket, that was the lunchbox that as a child, I would eat my lunch and look at the pictures every day. And for this moment, I'm living it, which was really weird.
Wow. I mean, not only to have met one of your heroes, but then to basically, to pay honor to him and homage by doing this stunt in essentially the same rocket that he was in. I just can't help but think myself as, you, because I guess you had to deploy the chute. It didn't happen automatically. You
Oh,
did not black out. So you basically relied on your experience on knowing that, okay, I know I've got to do this in order for this to be a successful attempt. But just the fear response that I would think most of us would feel is that's something I guess you must have learned to manage over your career, is that fear has a place, but I imagine you're talking about the emotional component, like it could get in the way of doing your job successfully and safely.
well, Greg, I have four kids, and I've often told them when I go to work, I'm scared all the time. Believe me, there's no macho in me. I'm scared of many things, and I tell my kids, listen, there is nothing wrong with being scared. That's normal. In fact, that's healthy. It's how one manages how they react to the fear that define them as a person. You know, I've always said that I tell my kids, the road is paved with flat squirrels that couldn't make a decision one way or another. Don't be a flat squirrel, make a decision and stick with it. So I'm scared all the time when I go to work. I just try to stay as calm as I can and work through that fear, because that will define the person that you are. I've always said, be maverick, not cougar.
Right.
Always be maverick. Don't be cougar.
Well, in the world of, motorcycling and so forth, it's, as you well know, is that you've been riding since you were a kid. Sometimes you just have to commit. If you go in
Yeah,
uncertain and scared, that's when you're going to make mistakes. You have to commit, and it's usually going to work out better that way, so.
absolutely, without question. In fact, in like this whole project, I committed. I almost named my company No Plan B, because I had no plan B. It was all plan A or nothing. There was no plan B. This was full commitment of my reputation, full commitment of my finances, and ultimately full commitment of my life.
Well, congratulations on, seeing that through. That's great. So what I want to know is, tell us a little bit about this documentary, Stuntman.
Well, I listen. I had never when Steven, my partner, Steve Goldenbiowski, and Kurt Matilla, the director, all three of us got together and said, "Okay, we've got all this footage. Let's try and make a movie out of it." I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd ever be the subject of a movie, let alone be the subject of a movie that is now a Disney movie with The Rock as executive producer. They released this movie in 63 countries to over 200 million people. I
Wow.
had no idea that is what would be the end result. Uh, or I probably, thank God I didn't know, because I would have been petrified and probably messed the whole thing up. But ultimately, it started with the fact, if I was going to do it, I was doing it internally first for myself and for my family. I wanted to show my kids that if you work really hard, in fact, when I came back from Twin Falls, one of the first things my daughter said at dinner with all of us sitting there, my daughter said, "Dad, I guess it's going to be really hard for us to say we can't do something when we just watched our dad finish out the dream of his hero."
Absolutely.
So I did it first and foremost. I did it for my family and for myself. It was an internal thing. I didn't care if 5 people saw it or 5,000 people saw it. That's not what this whole thing was about. From Jump Street, from day one, it was always about doing it. Evel Knievel left some great inspirational quotes and things, which you know I live by some of them. One of them was, he said, that you have to be willing to jump the canyon for nothing before you'll do it for anything. And that's so true. I saw in the course of this, once this snowball started getting bigger, all these people from left field. I want to jump it. Oh, I'm going to jump it. They got to pay me $1 million and I'll jump it. Or I want $100,000. I'm going to jump it. And then I thought, I must be an idiot because I'm just doing it for me. I'm doing it for a home movie, basically. And it did hurt. I was mocked and ridiculed sometimes in a lot of it silently. This fool's just doing it for nothing just to do it. But it wasn't for nothing. It was for the internal satisfaction of doing it. And sometimes, at least to me, the internal integrity and is priceless. How do you put a price on a fantasy? You just don't. So I started by doing this for myself and my family, and I didn't really care about everybody else. And at the end of the day, that's what kept me moving forward, and that's why I prevailed. Everybody else was still stuck at the starting line wanting a paycheck, and I must have been the only idiot that just wanted to do it to honor the man that inspired me.
Well, there's a lot of purity to that. It wasn't necessarily like a Red Bull sponsored, stunt or something like that. I mean, it was, but also, you were saying that, you've had a successful career as a professional stuntman. You've, as you said, you're often behind the scenes, it's not really about your individual recognition, but as a, true highlight or capstone to a successful career. And then to have this documentary about it is, that's a way to share it with a wider audience, even if that wasn't your original intention. That's great.
People often ask me, well, how's the movie? And I got to tell you, it's a movie about me. How do I tell you how the movie is? I don't know. I can't tell you whether it's good and I can't tell you whether it's bad. However, I can tell you one thing. I am very proud of what's there, whether it's good or bad or however it's interpreted. I am very proud of every frame of footage. And I was also involved in every minutia, every detail, because originally I was just doing it for me. For instance, partially through, once the momentum was going, well, then of course everybody's your friend and everybody wants to be part of it once they see you're going. I was offered close to $1 million for my parachute, for it to be an advertisement. $1 million. I mean, that is a shit ton of money. And I'm not a rich guy. I'm thinking, God, if they want to put an advertisement. And my original intent from day one was I did not want a standard parachute. I wanted the American flag. That's all I wanted. Evel Knievel was all about America. I am blessed and fortunate to have been born in the United States. I am a proud flag waving, saluting, standing for the flag. I wanted the American flag as my parachute. That's it. End of period, the end of story. So it meant some hard decisions like turning down close to $1 million, because at the end of the day, the statement that I wanted to make to my family and to my friends were, I wanted it to be as pure as could be, as American as could be, as unsponsored, uncorporate. I mean, this was like, just America, red, white, and blue, as pure as could be. So I wanted the American flag. That detail, that was just one of the many details that so the movie, I think, captures all of that. It's very pure. It's raw. I'm not an actor. I mean, there's a very good reason I'm a stuntman and not an actor, as you could probably tell if you see the film. I'm very un-Hollywood, even though I work in Hollywood. But the film, I will say, I'm very proud of it. Hopefully the film will outlast me even, and it'll be in the Disney library forever.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, you have a body of work that even if you're not, somebody who is known by face or name as much as some actor or something, but you have a body of work that you can always refer back to, that your family can and so forth. But to have this documentary that's as really as a way to really honor your career and your achievements, I mean, it's got to be humbling, and so that's great.
It's very, it's very humbling. I mean, it's all I can say is I poured my soul, my finances, my everything into this project. And I think the film captures it. There's one thing I'm really proud of in today's age of CGI, which is computer generated imagery. These superhero movies, most of it is smoke and mirrors and fake. And it's okay. I mean, people love it and God bless them. I'm more of a purist. I like old school. And I will say one thing about my movie, there is not one frame of CGI or computer enhanced. Every stunt you see in my movie is real,
Right.
real time, real everything. In fact, the rocket launch, we got so lucky in that all the cameras captured it. There's stuff in there you're going to go, son of a gun, is that real or did they just enhance it? No, every single frame of footage is original. It's unenhanced. It is the way it is. And I'm proud of that too. My film it may look like an antique archaic dinosaur, but it's real. And I'm very proud of that.
So how do people check out the Stuntman?
If they care to see it, it is on Disney Plus. It's in there. You just find it, put in Stuntman, and hopefully they enjoy it. I mean, like I said, whether you think it's good or bad, that I'll leave that to you. However, just know that I tried my best in that film. I laid it all out there. So at the very least, you get the authentic, unpolished, unvarnished truth, at least out of me, my truth. And that's all I can promise you. I can't promise whether you like it or not, but if you like it, send me a message. I'm on social media. Find me. And, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Find me and say, hey, good movie, or hey, I want my money back. Sorry, I can't give you your money back because it's Disney's film now.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
if you like the film, you'll know that it's pure and shoot me a message. I'm like a regular schmuck. I'm very accessible.
Thanks, Eddie. Well, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you. You have a really interesting story and you've got a great career that I encourage everybody to, go out and check out the Stuntman if you can get it on Disney Plus. Anything else you want to share with folks before we sign off?
No, I mean, I think, Greg, first of all, Greg, thanks for having me. It's humbling to be on Writer magazine. I mean, something like I said that I used to cut pictures out of. So that's humbling. For everybody listening, I would just say, hey, I'm just like everybody else. There's a reason I'm a stuntman and not an actor. I'm like a regular guy. And I would just say, go out, and if you have something you want to go, just go for it, man. You don't exactly have to have a game plan. You just have to commit and go for it. And you may fail. Evel Knievel was more famous for his failures than he was for his successes. I mean, had he not crashed at Caesar's Palace, we probably would have never heard of him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, just don't be afraid to go for it,
Well, those are definitely good words to live by. Again, I really appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have links in the show notes for the Stuntman. For Eddie Braun, again, thanks for coming on the show. And
thank you for having me. And one other quick note, if you guys do like the film, Disney really went out on a limb. You'll notice that the movie is a little unlike most of their programming. So if you see Stuntman on Disney Plus, somehow let them know you liked it, because my film Stuntman is a film that they acquired, they did not make, and they're taking a chance, but they're watching it very closely. So if you happen to like the film, somehow let them know, because they're a business and they're going to go after the content of what the people want. So if you guys like Stuntman or something like that, let Disney know, and they'll hopefully make more movies that are just normal people trying to do some cool stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And for the Writer Magazine Insider Podcast, I'm Greg Drevenstedt. Thanks for listening, and keep the rubber side down. If you've enjoyed listening to the Writer Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit writermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Writer Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.